Hello, this is your host, Renata Ortega. Welcome to today's episode of the Cycle Breaker and Changemaker podcast. This podcast is all about how to break free from negative generational cycles in order to create meaningful, lasting changes. For helpful tools and answers to your most pressing questions, be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Cycle Breaker Changemaker. I look forward to helping you on your cycle breaking and change-making journey. I promise you will find nothing more rewarding than this. In today's episode, I will be discussing overthinking. In my last episode, I discussed catastrophizing. I consider overthinking to be catastrophizing's equally unhelpful sibling. Overthinking and catastrophizing can stem from similar pasts as a way to cope with trauma. However, just like siblings, they have their own unique elements. Do you ever find yourself constantly ruminating, going over a situation repeatedly in your mind as if on replay? Or do you catch yourself thinking through as many possible scenarios as you can before moving forward? Do you feel it is safer to think about than to act upon a decision? If so, you could be experiencing overthinking due to trauma. If you are experiencing overthinking, it can cause you to become hyper-focused on your own thoughts, grow anxious about your inability to understand and manage them, and end up preventing you from taking action. This can cause stagnation and can be incredibly uncomfortable and stifling. So what exactly is overthinking? Overthinking can be a coping mechanism that develops as a response to a past trauma. People typically overthink about the future by worrying about the future or about the past by getting stuck on or ruminating about past events. Overthinking occurs when you put too much time and effort into thinking about or analyzing something in a way that is not helpful and is actually harmful. By repeatedly focusing on the same thought or the same situation over and over again in your mind, it can become disruptive to your life. While at first overthinking can present itself as if it is problem-solving, it is not. This is because problem-solving is actually a strategic method of thinking. When you problem-solve, you are able to make decisions and move forward, which comes with a great propelling energy. Overthinking, though, has the opposite effect. You can experience feelings of distress, analysis paralysis, and decision fatigue. So why does overthinking happen? Similarly to its sibling catastrophizing, which I discussed in episode 12, overthinking is a coping mechanism that helps us feel more in control of a possible outcome. If you have experienced childhood trauma, or if you had over-controlling caregivers, by overthinking, you can feel as if you have a sense of safety and security in your environment. This, of course, at first, makes us feel very good and very secure, which makes sense because we have a primitive human need to feel safe. When what should be straightforward decisions begin to make you freeze, you can see how overthinking becomes very unhelpful. It takes up so much emotional energy that you can be left feeling both physically and emotionally drained. I want to make it clear that overthinking, just like catastrophizing and hyperindependence, which I have discussed in past episodes, and hypervigilance and oversharing, which I will discuss in future episodes, are not signs of weakness. They're not character flaws. They are coping mechanisms that have been developed out of a need for survival. They were absolutely needed and helpful at times in your life. As you move away from those past events, you can look at these responses for what they truly are. Survival responses. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the fact that you needed to develop these. If they are no longer helpful and are hindering you, there are ways to work with the responses so that you can propel yourself forward instead of letting them make you feel trapped. Here's my story and how overthinking has impacted me as an adult. For as long as I can remember, I have been able to spot overthinking in others almost immediately. I've had peers that spent hours thinking about their outfits, whether or not to go on social outings, and how they should respond to messages. And I mean hours of needing to discuss, edit, and revise, to the point that others would become impatient and upset with them. Those are all not issues I faced, or so I thought. Overthinking started to rear its ugly head when my life load became very large. I have developed an incredibly high threshold for most things, so when I started to have trouble making decisions, I didn't understand what was going on. It was completely opposite to my usual way of navigating through life. I experienced going from having my ability to make rapid critical decisions under pressure to seeing every possible option in my mind at once and feeling like I could not select a single one because I was playing out every single one at the same time. I started to go over and over something that happened in the past. What if I had said this? What if I had said that? What would the outcome have been? All of this was such a waste of time because we all know logically we cannot change the past or dictate the future. We simply do not have that type of control. When you are dealing with trauma recovery, though, it can feel so deceptively helpful to think that we can actually take control of the past and of the future. So what have I done to break the cycle of trauma that has led to overthinking for me? Step 1. Noticing that I was stuck in an unhelpful thinking pattern and acknowledging that it was having a negative impact on my happiness. When I started to have trouble making decisions, like what toppings to put on a pizza, it finally hit me. This wasn't my normal way of functioning. Decisions that were arguably simple and not life-threatening began to feel like they were. This is where I recognized that something needed to change. Step 2. Naming it. Once I was able to say to myself that I was ruminating, obsessing on details, in analysis paralysis again, it was so freeing. Instead of just feeling something so uncomfortable, I was naming it something. This helped me look at it for what it was, a thinking pattern. Like a symptom, such as a runny nose when you have a cold. It was something that did not have to exist forever. Step 3. Doing it anyway. This was uncomfortable at first, but I had to just start doing it anyway. There was no way I could know if a decision was right or wrong because I could not predict the future. So I had to give it a try. If the decision was correct, great. If it was incorrect, it became a learning experience. The world did not end. It began. I have learned more from mistakes and challenging experiences in my life than from anything else. Part of being human is that largely, we need to experience something in order to truly believe it. Here's my experience and how implementing the steps I have shared has led to a positive outcome. I remember the first time I said out loud, I cannot make another decision today. I remember I felt exhausted, like I was going to collapse if I had to make another decision about anything. This was not because I was making more decisions than I was in the past. This was also not because the decisions were more complicated than in the past. I was already used to making thousands of decisions in a day and with rapid speed. This was because I had started to overthink all of my decisions in a valiant effort to control the outcomes. When I heard myself say I could not make another decision, it made me stop and look at why. Why was my mind so loud? And where had my confidence in decision-making gone? Why was I seeing everything and anything all at once? And why was it so paralyzing? Looking back on that time, I was under an incredible amount of stress. I was dealing with navigating an extremely complicated medical system full of hurdles to get a past abuser help in order to protect themselves and others. This was all on top of my normal life load, which I could normally handle with grace. What this trauma was bringing up was infiltrating my everyday decision-making. I realized I was stuck and not, in fact, gaining any control. So I started to take action. I started to look at decisions differently I asked myself, is this a life or death decision? Does this decision have massive financial impact? And the answer was no. It was not as important a decision as I had made it out to be. It didn't deserve that much of my time and attention because it was taking away from what mattered more, my well-being. So I started making decisions, and if I got stuck, I caught myself and reminded myself that I did not need to let overthinking gain control over me. I was in the driver's seat. I was in the position of power. And since making that change, I have not looked back. This is something that you can train yourself to do too. Start with something small and work your way up from that. Never underestimate your ability to change your way of thinking. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Cycle Breaker and Changemaker. I would love to hear from you and to receive your feedback. Remember, you can reach me on Instagram or Facebook at Cycle Breaker Changemaker. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts in order to help me continue to help you. I am looking forward to having you join me for the next episode. Until then, please take care.